In the valley, the atmosphere was almost suffocating, with tension hanging thick in the air. The expressions of Shan Songxing and his four companions were especially grim. Clearly, this unexpected trouble had caught them off guard. Although they had gained significant opportunities in this shattered land of ancient ruins, strengthening their power considerably, they were fully aware that they stood no chance against a team like Ji Xuan's. Once they truly clashed, defeat would be inevitable. What should we do? Hiao asked, his face dark, looking toward Shan Songxing. Shan Songxing's expression shifted, torn between uncertainty and anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "I'll take the academy token and run. You all scatter." Upon hearing this, Li Xuantong's face darkened. At this distance, they can already lock onto us. Running alone won't work. Besides, catching you or catching us doesn't matter. Once one of us falls into their hands, they'll use it to target Mu Chen. And knowing Mu Chen's temperament, I don't think he'll stand by. Otherwise, he wouldn't be rushing here right now. "We'll stay together," said Yang Lin, clenching his teeth. "Ji Xuan's team is strong, but we're not made of clay." Shan Songxing's palms creaked as he clenched them tightly. His face was ashen, and a sense of humiliation surged within him. His prideful nature had always been his defining characteristic. Before Mu Chen's appearance, he had been the top of the heavenly ranking at Northern Heaven's Spiritual Academy. Yet now, they were being cornered like this, utterly helpless. Boom! Shan Songxing slammed his fist into the nearby rock wall. Cracks spread swiftly from the point of impact. He inhaled deeply and muttered in a low voice, "We retreat first. Mu Chen is on his way. We need to buy time. Once he arrives, Ji Xuan's plan will fail." Li Xiantong, Su Xian, and the others nodded. They didn't want to fall into Ji Xuan's hands, only to be used against Mu Chen. "Let's go." Shan Songxing barked, leaping into the air and speeding toward the opposite direction of the rushing wind. Behind him, Li Xiantong, Su Xian, and the others quickly followed, their faces tense. Whoosh! The five of them pushed their speed to the limit, streaking across the sky like lightning. The sharp sound of the wind sliced through the air, echoing through the empty mountain ranges. Shan Songxing's face was clouded with fury, his hands clenched so tightly his veins bulged. The act of running away felt like fire in his chest. Sizzle! A sharp sound, like the tearing of air, came from behind. "Move faster!" Shan Songxing's face shifted, his voice harsh. "Hee, my friends from Northern Heaven's Spiritual Academy, we've come such a long way, and you're already planning to leave without a greeting? Isn't that a bit impolite?" Before Shan Songxing could react, a calm voice rang out across the valley. Hearing the voice, Shan Songxing and his companions' hearts sank. "Don't listen to him. Keep going." Shan Songxing gritted his teeth, but before he finished speaking, his pupils shrank. He suddenly looked up, only to see a figure standing on a distant peak, hands clasped behind his back, smiling at them. The figure was dressed in white, his handsome face adorned with a warm, sun-like smile, making it impossible to feel suspicious. Yet, when Shan Songxing and the others saw him, their expressions changed dramatically. "Ji Xuan, please everyone stay." Ji Xuan looked at them with a smile. "Dream on." Shan Songxing sneered and quickly exchanged glances with Li Xiantong and the others. In the blink of an eye, the five scattered and sped away in different directions. Seeing this, Ji Xuan let out a soft sigh. His eyes showed no sign of emotional fluctuation. With a wave of his sleeve, an overwhelming surge of spiritual energy poured from his robes like a river. Whoosh! Whoosh! The river of spiritual energy split into five, appearing above Shan Songxing and his companions in an instant. The energy quickly condensed into five giant hands that slammed down fiercely. Boom! The earth-shattering sound of thunder echoed, and the five who had been speeding away were immediately sent flying back. Ji Xuan's strength was terrifying to such an extent that with a single palm strike, he forced five people working together to retreat. The five members of Shan Songxing's group were forced to regroup once again, their eyes flashing with a hint of shock. Ji Xuan's strength far exceeded their expectations. At present, in their team, Shen Songxing and Li Xianong were both at the peak of the first-level Divine Soul Tribulation and already qualified to reach the second-level Divine Soul Tribulation. Meanwhile, Su Xian, He Yao, and Yang Lin had all reached the Spiritual Energy Tribulation level. With such a lineup, they were already quite strong. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it into the top 16 on their own strength. However, even such a strong team was now being blocked by Ji Xuan alone. Friends from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, you should know that my target is not you. As long as you surrender, I won't make things difficult for you, Ji Xuan said gently. Shen Songxing didn't respond, his gaze flickering slightly. Whoosh! At that moment, a sound of breaking wind came from behind. For light shadows darted toward them, forming a complete blockade in all four directions, sealing the sky. These were Ji Xuan's teammates who had arrived. Upon seeing this, the five of them exchanged a glance, their expressions darkening. The current situation made it almost impossible for them to escape. They exchanged glances, took deep breaths, and their gazes grew sharp. Even if there was no longer a chance of escape, they absolutely couldn't surrender. They had to buy time.
Attack!
Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong almost simultaneously launched themselves forward, their hands clasped together. Long spears appeared in their hands, and their spiritual energy erupted without reservation, the piercing spear light shooting toward Ji Xuan's position like lightning. At the same time, Su Xian, He Yao, and Yang Lin also charged toward another direction, choosing to combine their forces to break through that blockade. Boom! Boom! The spear light slammed into Ji Xuan's position, and the mountain where he stood was shattered. As massive rocks fell, Ji Xuan remained standing in the air, his steps seeming weightless. His white robes were still pristine, and despite the fierce attacks from Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong earlier, they had caused him no harm. It seems that you don't agree with my proposal, Ji Xuan said with a regretful shake of his head as he looked at Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong. He then lightly stepped forward. Whoosh! When his foot landed, his figure vanished, as if teleporting, appearing directly between the faces of the two men. Shen Songxing and Li Xuantong's pupils dilated in shock. Boom! The two responded with perfect synchronization, instinctively slamming their palms forward, unleashing an overwhelming force of spiritual energy, striking at Ji Xuan who passed by. Bang! However, as soon as their palm winds struck, Ji Xuan's palm winds met them head-on. In the next instant, the three forces collided. An astonishing spiritual energy storm erupted. Ji Xuan's figure barely moved, but Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong were knocked back by the impact. Their bodies tumbled, sliding hundreds of meters through the air before they barely managed to stabilize themselves. Their hands trembled slightly, and they felt intense pain, as if their bones had been shattered. I assume that you two are top figures in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Now that Mu Chen has surpassed you as a new student, you must be feeling uncomfortable, right? If that's the case, why not team up with me? If we take down Mu Chen, I, in the name of the Sacred Spirit Academy, promise to ensure your entry into the final tournament, Ji Xuan slowly said as he stared at Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong. As a newcomer to the Sacred Spirit Academy, he understood how much the older, more accomplished students despised him. Mu Chen's situation was similar to his own, and Ji Xuan guessed these people probably didn't have a favorable opinion of Mu Chen either. However, his prediction was clearly mistaken. Upon hearing his offer, Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong only smiled. The smile wasn't intense, but it carried a faint mockery. That mockery made Ji Xuan's previously warm smile gradually fade away. If these were members of the Sacred Spirit Academy's teams, Ji Xuan was confident they would have sold him out in an instant. But these Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy people were actually defending the very Mu Chen who surpassed them? Truly ungrateful, Ji Xuan said with a cold smile. In the next moment, his figure disappeared once again. Boom! Incredible spiritual energy erupted once more, sending Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong flying backward. Blood appeared at the corners of their mouths, but before they could react, a ghostly figure reappeared in front of them, its increasingly fierce attacks closing in. Bang! Bang! The two continued to retreat in a disheveled manner. Even when they teamed up, they were completely suppressed by Ji Xuan, unable to counter at all. In just a few breaths of time, The blood at the corners of their mouths grew thicker. Dong. Meanwhile, on the other side, Su Xian and her two companions tried to break through from one direction, only to realize that, even when joining forces against the youth from the Sacred Spirit Academy, they still couldn't gain the upper hand. Heh, did you choose to break through from my direction because I seem the weakest? The young man they were targeting was Mu Feng, who smiled mischievously as he looked at them, mocking them. In the other three directions, the remaining three members of their group merely blocked the paths, not making a move. They knew that if Su Xian and her companions had chosen to break through from their side, they might have had a chance, but they chose Mu Feng. His strength was second only to Ji Xuan and their team. Su Xian and her companions remained silent, their faces grim, but they unleashed a ferocious attack. Mu Feng, stop stalling. Mu Feng was about to mock them again when a cold voice suddenly came from not far away. It was Ji Xuan's voice. It looks like you're in for trouble. Upon hearing this, Mu Feng smiled, his expression turning chilling as he looked at Su Xian and her two companions. Seeing the cold smile on Mu Feng's face, Su Xian and her companions exchanged glances, and their spiritual energy surged out without reservation. Swish! The three of them shot forward, their coordination refined after so much time in the Spirit Academy Grand Competition. Though they were only at the level of spiritual energy tribulation, their combined might was enough to make even a first-level Divine Soul Tribulation expert hesitate. But Mu Feng before them was not a first-level Divine Soul Tribulation expert. He was a true second-level Divine Soul Tribulation powerhouse. His strength was even greater than LV Tian, who had been defeated by Mu Chen. Facing the three's intense attacks, Mu Feng only smiled slightly, a hint of mockery in his expression. Then, he clenched his hand, and a dark red long halberd appeared in his grasp, his gaze growing even colder. On the halberd, there seemed to be a blood-red crescent moon pattern, emitting a chilling aura. Demonic moon halberd, moon slash. Mu Feng's expression remained indifferent as he swung the halberd downward. A blood-red light exploded forth, and the tip of the halberd formed a massive blood-red crescent moon. The crescent howled downward, carrying a bone-chilling force, and aimed directly at Su Xian and her companions. As the blood-red crescent passed, it left a rift in space itself. Su Xian and her companions' expressions changed, and they dared not be careless. They immediately activated their powerful abilities. Phoenix Wings Spirit Umbrella. Su Xian's delicate hand gripped a spiritual umbrella shaped like a phoenix's wings, sparkling with spiritual light. The sound of a phoenix's cry echoed as a powerful wave of spiritual energy radiated from it. Clearly, this was a formidable top-tier spiritual artifact. Demonic Dragon Blade. Yao also brandished a large blade shaped like a dragon's head, its surface covered in dragon scales. With a loud roar, a massive dragon-shaped blade aura shot forth. 100 Beasts Ring. Yang Lin's hand also glowed as a vicious-looking ring formed, surrounded by spiritual light. It transformed into the shapes of 100 beasts, roaring and shaking the heavens. The three of them clearly had exceptional encounters and powerful spiritual artifacts. Their combined force was immense, and at this moment, their momentum was overwhelming. Boom! The four powerful attacks collided like lightning, sending a massive shockwave through the sky. The impact created a visible spiritual energy shockwave that spread almost instantly, like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Mu Feng saw this and smiled coldly, his gaze turning sharp. His demonic moon halberd surged once more, and this time, blood-red light surged as countless blood-red crescent moons appeared, covering the sky in a sweeping attack. Boom! Faced with the relentless onslaught of the crimson crescent moons, the attacks from Su Xian and her companions were almost instantly defeated. Despite having the assistance of spiritual artifacts, the gap between them and Mu Feng was simply too vast. The difficulty of spiritual energy and the dual divine soul tribulation couldn't be compensated by mere spiritual tools. Bang! Their offensive shattered, and all three of them were jolted back. They staggered backward as if struck by a heavy blow, blood oozing from the corners of their mouths. Swish! Before they could steady themselves, Mu Feng's figure appeared behind Su Xian in a flash, clearly intent on ending the battle quickly. Su Xian, be careful. He Yao's face changed instantly, shouting in alarm. Su Xian, her spiritual energy surging within her body, noticed Mu Feng's approach just in time. However, her strength had been drained, and she could do nothing but watch as Mu Feng's sharp palm strike, faster than thunder, sliced toward her. Bang! Just as the wind from Mu Feng's strike was about to land on Su Xian's body, a powerful force slammed into her from the side, sending her flying. He Yao had appeared where Su Xian was moments before, and Mu Feng's vicious palm strike came down mercilessly, aiming directly at He Yao's wrist. Essence, blood sprayed out. A cry of agony escaped from He Yao as his left hand was severed by Mu Feng's strike. His body trembled violently from the excruciating pain, staggering back unsteadily, his steps faltering. Move! He Yao, clutching his bleeding arm, shouted at Su Xian, who was still stunned. What a touching scene. Blood dripped from Mu Feng's palm as he grinned, his gaze cold and sharp as a blade. Without hesitation, his figure shifted, and he charged towards Su Xian again. Bastard! Yang Lin cursed furiously, gritting his teeth. Ignoring everything else, he leaped forward to stand in front of Su Xian, spiritual energy howling as he threw a punch at Mu Feng. Mu Feng smirked and didn't hold back. His fist moved faster than lightning and collided with Yang Lin's punch. Crack! The terrifying force surged through, and Yang Lin's arm twisted violently, his bones cracking under the pressure. His body was sent flying back as if struck by lightning, blood spraying from his wounds. Su Xian watched helplessly as the two men were severely injured protecting her, and tears welled up in her eyes. At the same time, on the other side, Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong were covered in blood, but their eyes remained fierce. Even though they were being crushed, they refused to give up. They pushed their spiritual energy to the limit, launching wave after wave of attacks at Ji Xuan. However, each time, Ji Xuan simply responded with a detached palm strike, and the two were once again sent reeling backward, their bodies soaked in more blood. The scene was tragic and filled with despair. In the sky above, the wind howled, and shadows of people hovered above the distant mountains, their eyes locked on the ongoing battle. Clearly, these were powerful teams who had arrived quickly due to their proximity. As they observed the one-sided nature of the battle, they couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy's team would be wiped out today. Despite their sympathy, no one moved to help. After all, facing such a formidable team in the Spiritual Academy Grand Competition, few would dare provoke them. Pfft. Blood spilled from Shan Songxing and Li Xiantong's mouths. They glared at Ji Xuan, who remained calm and composed, his smile unruffled. Despite noticing the defeat of Su Xian and her group, they were powerless to help. Their eyes reddened with rage. Their pride seemed to shatter in this moment. Having thought they had made great progress, they were still so weak, unable to even protect their companions. It seems you're in pain, Ji Xuan said with a faint smile. But if you want to place blame, blame Mu Chen. He's the one who started all this. Ji Xuan's words were as poisonous as his actions, even more so. He not only wanted to trample Shen Songxing and the others beneath his feet, but he also wanted them to turn this humiliation into hatred and shift it onto Mu Chen. You are always going to be inferior to Mu Chen, Shen Songxing sneered despite the blood at the corner of his mouth. His smile twisted and grim. What did you say? Ji Xuan's gaze grew cold. Because you're always just one person. No one will believe in you, not even your own companions. When they face trouble like this, they will abandon you. But we will never abandon Mu Chen. Shen Songxing mocked. So, in the end, you're no match for Mu Chen. He's stronger than you. Heh. Ji Xuan gave a cold smile, shaking his head. Who cares about the trust of some useless people? Your so-called trust is laughable and fragile in the face of true power. As soon as Ji Xuan finished speaking, his expression turned completely cold. Slowly, he continued, So, this is where your story ends. Whoosh. The moment his last word fell, his figure vanished like a phantom. Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong both instinctively retreated in unison. However, just as they retreated, a blurry figure appeared between them. That icy cold hand, like an eagle's claw, immediately gripped their throats. Boom! Their bodies were slammed heavily against the steep mountain wall, causing the rocks behind them to crack. Both of them coughed up blood as their spiritual energy fluctuated, completely drained. Before them, Ji Xuan stood expressionless in midair, his hand gripping their throats, rendering them immobile. On the other side, Mu Feng, with a smile on his face, looked at Su Xian and said softly, "Now, is there anyone left to protect you?" Whoosh! His figure shot forward, targeting Su Xian. Su Xian gritted her teeth, her spiritual energy surging to its limit. At this point, she had no choice but to fight Mu Feng with everything she had. Bang! The demonic moon halberd slammed into the spirit umbrella with a ferocious force, sending a terrifying shockwave. Su Xian's body shuddered, and the spirit umbrella flew out of her hand. Whoosh! Mu Feng closed the distance, his eyes fixed on her delicate face, a cold smile spreading across his lips. He then struck, releasing a surge of spiritual energy that tore through the air. "It's over." With Mu Feng's icy words, Su Xian closed her eyes in despair. Boom! However, just as Mu Feng's palm was about to land on her chest, a deafening thunderclap rang through the heavens. Mu Feng's expression changed dramatically. A black lightning bolt tore through the sky at an unimaginable speed, slamming into Mu Feng's body with a powerful force. Boom! Mu Feng was sent flying backward, crashing into the ground with a tremendous impact. The ground beneath him collapsed, huge cracks spreading like a spider's web. The black lightning didn't stop there. It turned and dove straight down, its flashing fist landing mercilessly on Mu Feng's chest before he could react. Pfft! Mu Feng's pupils dilated in shock as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The earth beneath him cracked again. He roared, trying to struggle, but a hand, crackling with lightning, clamped down on his throat, freezing his movements instantly. As the black lightning began to fade, a tall figure emerged. It was a handsome face, though it was now twisted with a murderous intent. Mu Chen. The air was filled with shocked exclamations. Not far away, Ji Xuan, who had just defeated Shen Zongxing and Li Xintong, slightly shifted his gaze. He turned his head slowly and looked at the familiar figure wreathed in lightning. A smile gradually appeared on his lips. "Mu Chen, you finally arrived." The vast heavens were filled with figures, and in the distance, streaks of light flashed across the sky. All the strong teams stood in midair, their gazes fixed on the land below, or more specifically, on the slender figure entwined in black lightning. They could clearly feel the overwhelming killing intent emanating from that figure, an intent so intense it seemed to chill the air around them. That was Mu Chen. He's finally arrived. The voices of the crowd gathered, followed by whispers spreading quietly through the air. If he'd been any later, the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy team would have been wiped out. Ji Xuan and the others sure don't hold back. Looks like things won't settle easily today. Ji Xuan's not someone to mess with. Mu Chen's been rising in fame lately, but can he really go up against Ji Xuan? His strength seems to be at the spiritual energy tribulation level. The whispers continued to spread, and all eyes were focused on the two figures at the center of attention. It was clear to everyone that today, this place was about to witness a battle that would shake the entire arena. Amidst the gazes, Mu Chen stood firmly in the collapsed earth, his hand gripping Mu Feng's throat like an eagle's talon. The killing intent around him made it clear that if he wished, he would kill without hesitation. Mu Feng, struggling in his grasp, had a pale face, the blood at the corner of his mouth making him look pitiful. His eyes burned with hatred and unwillingness as he stared at Mu Chen. The previous attack had been too fast for him to react, and he had been subdued in an instant. He could never believe that Mu Chen could suppress him in a fair fight. Su Xian's eyes were fixed on Mu Chen's figure not far away. It had been nearly half a year since they last met, and although not much had changed, his once gentle and handsome face now seemed harder, perhaps due to the killing intent he carried. He seemed like a divine spear, standing tall in the world. Su Xian wiped the blood from the corner of her lips, and her tense heart slowly began to relax. That figure seemed to carry an unshakable confidence, giving others a sense of calm. Mu Chen turned his head and looked at Su Xian. His previously cold gaze softened somewhat, and he said, "Senior Su Xian, are you all right?" Su Xian shook her head, then turned her gaze to He Yao and Yang Lin, her eyes reddening as she said, "But they're badly injured." He Yao's hand had been severed by Mu Feng earlier, blood flowing from the wound. Yang Lin was covered in blood and looked extremely disheveled. However, when they saw Mu Chen's arrival, both of them breathed a sigh of relief, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. Mu Chen gave them an apologetic nod. He Yao, struggling to move, leaned against a rock and forced a smile at Mu Chen. "Do you think you can handle this?" He was, of course, asking if Mu Chen was confident he could deal with the current situation. After all, he knew how powerful Ji Xuan's team was. "As long as I'm here, they won't hurt you," Mu Chen replied softly. "Then it's up to you." He Yao looked at the young man, now shining with unparalleled brilliance, and nodded slowly. Mu Chen lowered his chin slightly, then raised his head. His gaze, now indifferent, locked onto the figure not far away. The moment their eyes met, the chilling killing intent almost froze the very air between them. "Mu Chen, you finally came," Ji Xuan said, his grip tightening on Shan Songxing and Li Xuantong's necks, his voice calm. "I came to see the grand show you've prepared for me. Is it going to be more exciting than last time?" Mu Chen smiled slightly and replied. Ji Xuan smiled as well. "I don't think you'll be disappointed. I'm looking forward to it," Mu Chen said slowly. "Let go of Mu Feng." A harsh voice rang out from the sky. The three members of the Sacred Spirit Academy glared at Mu Chen, their powerful spiritual energy sweeping out from their bodies, eyeing him like hungry wolves. These three had all reached the first-level Divine Soul Tribulation stage. Although they weren't as strong as Mu Feng, they were certainly not weak. However, Mu Chen completely ignored their threats. The three of them froze at the sight, their eyes turning cold. They exchanged a quick glance, and almost simultaneously, they struck out with their palms. A tremendous surge of spiritual power erupted, transforming into a spiritual palm imprint aimed directly at Mu Chen's head, intending to suppress him. Mu Chen, however, remained completely still. Whoosh! Just as the spiritual palm imprints were about to land, a sharp, whistling sword sound pierced the air from the horizon, followed by three massive sword lights streaking across. Sizzle! The sword lights roared past, splitting the three spiritual palm imprints in half, and they dissolved into countless points of light. Swish! Countless gazes turned toward the direction of the sword lights, and there, two figures streaked toward them like shooting stars, finally materializing into two slender, graceful silhouettes beside Mu Chen. The two girls both had slender, graceful figures, their faces as stunning as the autumn skies, captivating enough to brighten the atmosphere that had previously felt stiff and still. Almost all eyes now turned toward them, captivated by their presence. "That's Wen Xian. The other girl is Luoli, right? I know her. She's the Luo King from the Spirit Road." At the Spirit Road's end, even Ji Xuan was gravely wounded by her. "Looks like they're Mu Chen's reinforcements. These two girls are no pushovers. If they fought, even Ji Xuan wouldn't be confident of victory. No wonder Mu Chen dared to show up." The arrival of the two girls stirred even more astonished murmurs. Compared to Mu Chen and Ji Xuan, they were clearly the more eye-catching ones. Luoli and Wen Xian stood on either side of Mu Chen, casting a glance at him before their eyes shifted, finally resting on Ji Xuan in the distance. Wen Xian and Ji Xuan hadn't crossed paths much before, but now that they met, she scrutinized him with obvious interest, as if curious about the man who was her rival and the one who had taken her first place. As for Luoli, her stunning face remained indifferent. Her eyes, clear and beautiful like glazed porcelain, simply swept over Ji Xuan once, her gaze calm and unwavering. Ji Xuan's eyes locked onto Luoli the moment she appeared. Her serene, crystal-clear gaze made his lips twitch involuntarily. "Luoli, long time no see." He suppressed the agitation in his heart and said slowly. Luoli's beautiful eyes remained on Ji Xuan for a moment before she softly spoke. "Do you remember what I said to you at the end of the Spirit Road?" Ji Xuan's pupils constricted slightly, and his expression became sharp. That moment was one he would never forget. The girl in the black dress had fought him to a standstill, and in the end, without a single glance in his direction, she had calmly told him that his life would belong to Mu Feng, so she wouldn't kill him. I think he might disappoint you. Ji Xuan's eyes turned cold as he stared at Mu Feng, his grip tightening on the hands of Xun, Songxing, and the others. Luo Li heard this, and a stunning, faint smile appeared on her face. She spoke softly, "Then you will be disappointed. He's stronger than you." Her gentle tone held no trace of mockery, but the soft words sent a shiver through Ji Xuan, who usually remained composed. A shadow crossed his handsome face, and veins began to pop on his arms. The three members of Ji Xuan's team looked at him in surprise, likely the first time they had seen him so visibly shaken, his emotions exposed. The gaze of everyone in the area was now drawn to the three of them, Mu Feng, Luo Li, and Ji Xuan. Sensing an undercurrent in the air, they all exchanged strange looks. Is that so? I'm truly looking forward to it. Ji Xuan finally took a deep breath, suppressing his rising anger. He then turned his cold, mocking gaze on Mu Feng, smiling thinly. How exactly do you plan on surpassing me? With your weak spiritual energy? Mu Feng chuckled in response, then raised the Sumeru bracelet he held in his hand. Let's release everyone, shall we? Ji Xuan also smiled, but the smile lacked any warmth. He raised his hand, and both Shun Songxing and Li Xintong were thrown out by him. Mu Chen's expression was calm as he also tossed Mu Feng aside, sending him crashing into a rock that shattered to pieces. Mu Feng climbed out of the rubble, looking particularly disheveled, his face ashen as he glared at Mu Chen, but he dared not act rashly. Su Xian quickly helped Shun Songxing and Li Xintong to their feet. Both were covered in blood, looking extremely disheveled. Mu Chen looked at the two of them, his eyes filled with apology. Stop talking nonsense, it's up to you now. That bastard is strong, and if you're not confident, we should just run. As long as the green hills remain, there's always firewood to burn. Shun Songxing grinned and patted Mu Chen's shoulder. Mu Chen smiled and nodded. Whoosh, whoosh. The sound of wind breaking grew louder and louder. Looking around, there were figures everywhere across the mountains, as nearly all the strong teams participating in the Spirit Academy competition had been attracted here. Ji Xuan wiped the blood off his hand calmly, then raised his head and looked at the sea of figures across the mountain. With a gentle wave of his hand, he said, "Dust annihilation operation. Let's begin." The vast expanse of the world was filled with a sea of people, each figure standing in midair, maintaining a wary distance from each other. The sea of black-clad people stretched from the sky to the distant horizon, with clear layers. And due to the sheer number of people, the spiritual energy emanating from their bodies made the whole world shimmer in a dazzling array of colors. At this moment, every gaze in the sky was focused on the vast land below, where two opposing forces stood off. The team led by Ji Xuan was undoubtedly the strongest among all the teams, and the key was that Ji Xuan himself was a deep and unfathomable powerhouse, difficult to predict. It seemed that since the beginning of the Spirit Academy competition, Ji Xuan had never experienced a defeat. He had swept through every opponent with an unstoppable momentum, nearly invincible. Faced with such a monstrous figure, there was probably no one in the Spirit Academy competition who didn't regard him with caution. However, although Ji Xuan was strong, Mu Feng and his team were no pushovers. Not to mention when Qing Xian, who ranked second, even Mu Feng had recently risen to prominence, becoming a dark horse that couldn't be underestimated. As for Luo Li, though she had always kept a low profile, those who knew her were aware that this girl, who was no less beautiful or graceful than when Qing Xian, actually possessed terrifying strength. The small triangle formed by the three of them was undeniably powerful enough to astonish anyone. So, when these two forces collided head-on, who would have the upper hand was a question many people were eager to know. Therefore, when everyone saw Ji Xuan's hand wave lightly, their expressions tightened, and their bodies gradually tensed up. Mu Chen's hands hung loosely, his handsome face calm. Beside him, when Qing Xian and Luo Li also tightened their grips on their swords and war spear. Dust annihilation operation? Just the name alone made it clear that this was directed at Mu Chen. The wind howled through the sky, bringing with it a faint whistle. Although nearly all the strong teams from the Spirit Academy competition had gathered here, the atmosphere was so quiet that only the sound of the wind could be heard. Heh, what a lively scene. The almost frozen atmosphere did not last long. A clear, bright laugh suddenly rang out, breaking the tension in the air. Swish! All the gazes shifted almost instantly. They looked toward a distant mountain peak, where spiritual light flickered and several figures slowly emerged. At the forefront of these figures was a young man in a blue robe. His long hair flowed freely, giving him an exceptionally graceful appearance. As he appeared, the fierce winds around him seemed to become more intense, and the storm gathered in his direction, eventually forming into a tornado. That's... Gazes turned toward the young man's chest, where there was a blue academy emblem. The emblem depicted an expansive, boundless emerald sky, the symbol of one of the 5 great academies, the Azure Sky Spirit Academy. That's Lu Qingyun of Azure Sky Spirit Academy. He's actually the 4th-ranked Lu Qingyun. With the appearance of several figures, a burst of astonishment erupted throughout the realm. Lu Qingyun, a top-tier expert in the Spiritual Academy Grand Competition, ranked 4th, which was enough to demonstrate his strength. Such a person naturally had the qualifications to vie for supremacy, but no one expected Ji Xuan to have even invited him. Lu Qingyun. When Ji Xuan's beautiful eyes narrowed as she looked at the figure, her voice cold. Looks like you're getting involved in this matter today as well? Lu Qingyun turned his gaze toward her and smiled faintly. Ji Xuan, Mu Feng has gone a bit too far with this. So, you can't blame me. We're not that familiar, so don't address me like that. Or else, don't blame me for being rude. When Ji Xuan's eyes lowered slightly as she spoke indifferently. We've at least collaborated before. Lu Qingyun frowned, then glanced at Mu Feng, a hint of something unreadable flashing in his eyes. Besides, it's rare for me to see you get so close to anyone. Mu Feng's gaze flickered. He glanced at Wen Qingxian, smiled helplessly, and teasingly said, "Now I finally understand what they mean by a beautiful woman brings disaster." It was obvious that Lu Qingyun and Wen Qingxian were familiar with each other. From his tone, it was clear that Lu Qingyun had some affection for her. Perhaps the reason he would agree to help Ji Xuan deal with Mu Feng had something to do with jealousy. After all, he understood Wen Qingxuan's personality well. She would never have close interactions with any man. Even if they had to cooperate, once the task was done, she would part ways without leaving any opportunity for further contact. Thus, Lu Qingyun was witnessing Wen Qingxian cooperate with a man for the first time, and even risk going against someone as troublesome as Ji Xuan for him. Mu Feng, if you keep talking nonsense, do you believe I'll kick you to death? Wen Qingxian raised her brows, staring at Mu Feng with a bite of her silver teeth. Mu Feng smiled lightly. Now with Lu Qingyun added, this isn't exactly good news, Lu Oli remarked softly, looking at Mu Feng. Lu Qingyun was no comparison to the likes of LV Tian and others whom they had dealt with before. He was from one of the 5 great academies, and also a genius from the Wind Spirit clan. His talent and background were both extremely strong. If he were to help Ji Xuan, it would definitely create considerable pressure on them. Mu Feng nodded lightly. And this might not be all of Ji Xuan's preparations. In the distance, Ji Xuan stood suspended in the air, his expression still calm as he gazed at Mu Feng, unruffled. He then raised his hand and gestured lightly. Feng Yun, please make your appearance. At the sound of Ji Xuan's calm voice, many people's expressions tightened. Feng Yun? Could it be the one ranked 6th from the 9 Cauldrons Spiritual Academy? Cough. Looks like this will be the most exciting confrontation before the final tournament. It would be quite regrettable to miss it. Ji Xuan's voice fell, and immediately a laugh followed. The crowd turned their eyes toward the sound, and suddenly, the sea of people parted, and several figures walked out. The leading figure, wearing white robes, appeared quite handsome. His hair was a grayish white, and his eyes were exceptionally bright. At this moment, he smiled as he looked down at the sea of people gathering below. On his chest was a badge with the 9 Cauldrons emblem. That was the insignia of the 9 Cauldrons Spiritual Academy. 100 years ago, it had been one of the 5 great academies. However, due to some decline, it lost its title. Yet, it was undeniable that the Nine Cauldrons Spiritual Academy still possessed tremendous strength, as evidenced by this team's impressive 6th-place ranking. The appearance of Feng Yun inevitably caused a stir. Many people's expressions were shaken. The individuals Ji Xuan had invited were all top figures with the qualifications to challenge for a spot in the top 8. It seemed that Ji Xuan had indeed come prepared, and he was genuinely intent on utterly defeating Mu Feng and his team. Countless gazes gathered on Mu Feng, their eyes filled with an inexplicable emotion. No one knew if he could truly escape unscathed from Ji Xuan's preparations. Mu Feng, are you satisfied with the show I've prepared for you? Ji Xuan smiled at Mu Feng. If you're still not satisfied? As soon as his words fell, he extended his long hand and lightly clapped. The crowd couldn't help but feel a sudden chill as they watched his movement. Was this not over yet? As Ji Xuan's gentle applause echoed through the air, a sudden blood-red hue swept across the distant horizon. The blood-red color resembled a river of blood, rushing across the sky and ultimately surging into the region where numerous powerful figures had their attention focused. Mu Chen's eyes narrowed as he gazed at the blood river, while Luo Li, standing beside him, had a chill rising in her beautiful eyes. As the blood river dissipated, several figures appeared, all dressed in blood-red robes. One of them, whose face Mu Feng recognized, was none other than Xue Tiandu, who had previously been wounded by Mu Feng and fled from the Divine Wood Temple. At this moment, Xue Tiandu fixed his vicious gaze on Mu Feng, but he clearly wasn't the main focus. Standing in front of him was a young man with blood-red long hair. The young man wore a long blood-red robe, and his slightly crimson eyes scanned the surroundings before resting on Luo Li. With a faint smile, he spoke, "Luo Li, it's been a long time." Luo Li tightly gripped her Luo god sword. Her clear and beautiful eyes filled with coldness. Her red lips parted slightly, and her icy voice rang out, "Xue Tianhe, I didn't expect even you, the third prince of the Blood God clan, to show up. Anything is fair game for our Blood God clan, especially for you, the future queen of the Luo God clan." The young man, Xue Tianhe, smiled. A number of gazes from around the area lingered on Xue Tianhe, their expressions filled with uncertainty. Though his name didn't appear on the top 16 rankings, it was clear to everyone that the oppressive aura he carried was no less overwhelming than that of Lu Qingyun or Feng Yun. These three figures were all heavyweights in their own right. Ji Xuan had clearly put in considerable effort to deal with Mu Feng. The people standing here were all qualified to enter the final tournament. They were the most elite individuals in this spiritual academy competition. Mu Feng. A gentle smile reappeared on Ji Xuan's handsome face. He looked toward the three forces encircling Mu Feng from the north, south, east, and west and slowly asked, "Are you satisfied with my preparations?" Countless eyes turned toward Mu Feng. Facing such an intimidating lineup, even their formidable little triangle would likely feel immense pressure. This situation was not easy to break. The cards Ji Xuan had played were incredibly intimidating. So, how would Mu Feng respond to this situation? Under the gaze of countless onlookers, Mu Feng slowly lifted his head. To everyone's surprise, there was no sign of panic on his handsome face. Instead, a faint smile appeared, and then his soft voice rang out,